Okay, friends, and those online, Rob, we're getting ready to go here with Russell's presentation. So if everybody online would please mute themselves so as to not speak over Mr. Weis with his nice presentation here. I think we're ready to go.
Okay.
Take it away, Mr. Weis.
All right. Thanks, Ron. Well, like I said earlier in the meeting, 15 years ago, Barry and I did this together. As I recall, Barry kind of had more of the vehicles that were available at the time to go with the Mail Express cars to get them to the destinations of wherever they were in the town. So kind of like they used to say on TV summer reruns, if you haven't heard it for the first time, it's new to you. So for those of you that haven't been to an ops or seen the layout in person, probably depending on the trains that are scheduled to run that night, a fat third or maybe even half of the op sessions has to deal with passenger trains and head-in operations or mail and express. So I hope today that maybe you might want to incorporate some of this in either your op sessions or your own personal running of the trains. So we start out that in the late 40s, all the railroads wanted to buy the newest and the greatest equipment that either Bud or Pullman Standard was offering them to them. And what they wanted to do is have an RPO car that would match the rest of the consists. So thanks to Irv Athearn, we've seen this guy around for decades. This ran with the chief. Rivarossi did a very nice reproduction of this RPO that ran with the Broadway Limited. And of course, the ever beloved New York Central that ran with the 20th Century. Now, again, a lot of the railroads would take some even their Pullmans and paint them in the new paint scheme and upgrade them, air conditioning, yada, yada, yada. But what would happen if one of these guys went down for service, which they frequently did? So Central, like other railroads, went ahead and painted a number of the RPO cars to match the smooth side passenger cars. And if they ran with some stainless, like in this, that they would match the motive power. Just a side note on this picture that I thought was interesting, that in the early 50s, Central thought that we would play Santa Fe and paint all their passenger power with silver trucks and the silver gas tank. And I guess after a while, unlike the Santa Fe, they said it's really tough to keep these trucks all nice and shiny and everything, and went back to black. The other thing in this picture, if you can see it well from back there, is that you notice the B unit is an Elco unit. And also in the early 50s that Central went ahead and on their passenger Elco units got rid of their prime mover and put the EMD 567 in there. And so they could run an Elco unit with an EMD unit. So for the most part, the baggage in the RPO cars were the Pullman green. And believe it or not, behind all the filth on this is still a Pullman green car. And we'll find out later on that these pictures from my book were taken in Dallas. And you might say, oh, what is a New York Central car doing in Dallas? We'll get back to that. But whatever the trip was from probably Chicago down to Dallas, it must have gone through a heck of a lot of muddy grade crossings, because this car is not white lined, it is in service. Okay, so again, a lot of these mail and express trains were quite long. Here's one, probably the late 40s, with a Pennsy T1 pulling a respectable mail and express train. This one coming out of Detroit, probably mid 50s, again, quite a respectable mail and express train. And you might notice that the second car in doesn't look anything like a Central car. It's not. It's a Santa Fe. And it's the later, larger Santa Fe logo on there. And again, you kind of get the idea that as time went on, just like with regular freight cars, that these mail and express cars got interchanged and so on. So here is a Santa Fe car heading out to Chicago on the Central. All right. And of course, these guys, little known railroad, had a mail and express train. And I got to admit that I don't know how many cars are beyond the under the bridge there that we can't see, but it looks like a respectable train. And I got to admit, pretty nice with all the blue baggage cars there. So all of the mail and express trains were not a mile long. Here's one, 3 baggage, an RPO. And it could have been a rider coach on the end, where the crew could working the express cars could take a break. But I'm thinking it's probably a revenue coach. And this was one of the deals where you didn't get there in any fashion, no frills, but the price was right. Okay, so I can, and probably you could too, replicate that on your layout. Doesn't take a whole lot. And a lot of the cars that you could use for your mail express train don't have to be a baggage or an RPO. In this case, the real deal on the left is a old milk car that they've now made into an express car. And if you'll notice that it kind of has the same filth on it as that earlier slide with the RPO. And this again was taken in Dallas. So a lot of the cars got interchanged and probably went on the Santa Fe down to Dallas and other parts on the Santa Fe network. Thanks to Bruce McCohen, the model is a Sunshine model. And he let me know, he said, "Hey, Russ, I see this on eBay. You want it?" I said, "Yeah, are you going to build it for me?" He said, "Yeah, I will." It's very much a Craftsman kit. And I'm thankful for Bruce for building that for me. Another one that Central had is, and a lot of the other railroads, Monon, Rock Island, B&O, C&O, all had one of the old Pullman Standard troop carriers that they converted to an express boxcar. And I don't know if you can see it from the back, but you can see where they sheet metal over the windows that, used to be just pretty much bench seats for the troops. This is a Walthers model, and it can still be, again, eBay and obtained. And like I showed in the real deal slide there, that some railroads basically used a regular old box car with some upgrades. And on the Santa Fe, they beefed up the sill plate underneath there. It had high-speed Bettendorfs. You can't tell the difference in the model versus a regular, regular freight Bettendorf. So that's good to go. And of course, it had the steam and signal lines because this ran on a passenger train. So you don't always have to go out and get a baggage or an RPO, or it can be just a regular boxcar. Okay, so the focal point of my layout is Buffalo, and a lot of people, why Buffalo? Well, one is that was considered the halfway spot on the central between Chicago and New York. And also this happened. And if you can read all that, you don't need to see your optometrist for the rest of the year. This was taken from Classic Trains a number of years ago, and I would just love to have met the illustrator that did all this. I was wondering if it was still sane after all that, but in about a 9-hour period in 49 and the same general 49, 50, and so on, 31 trains in that 9-hour period came into Buffalo. The rear end guys probably took the observation car off. A number of the Pullmans got combined with other trains, the same if it had coaches. The head end cars got worked. The other thing, so here's a little closer view of that fold out. And the other nice thing about Buffalo is, although New York Central probably had 90% of the trains that came and left from there, it was Buffalo Central Terminal. And so Pensy had a train, a morning and an evening train that came in. CP had a train that came in, kind of a joint line between Central and Canadian Pacific was the Toronto, Hamilton, and Buffalo. They had a train that came in. And so you can see up at the top, the train came in from Buffalo and a bunch of lines go on. A couple cars went over to the advanced Knickerbocker, the interstate, blah, blah, blah. So you can see all this happened in that 9-hour period. So it gives us a lot of opportunities to do passenger train operations on the layout. So again, this is the office buildings. This is the freight office buildings. This part right here is the station. And so what we've tried to do, and hopefully if I can slow down Mickey's hands from keep moving faster and faster, I'll get the window frames and the glass on this and a little bit more, as Steve Lasher says, frou-frou to make it look more like the original building. But that's our freight house there, where a lot of the baggage and the express cars get spotted. Just to the left of that, which was not at the real deal, is our post office where the RPOs get spotted. This is kind of like the leftovers from our last stops from a few weeks ago. And Mike was the station master that night, and his crew went ahead and broke apart a mail and express that came in. So just like the real deal, that these cars are then are waiting to get put on other trains that are going to other destinations. So how do they know where these cars have to go? Same way is where we do the freight. I use the car card system. The manila envelopes, if you will, are the Micromark car cards. and inside of them is the waybill. Now, Micromart also makes a waybill to go inside of them, but I find it a little too much like the real deal, and it's very wordy, and I've operated on some layouts that use those, and okay, let's see, it's got this, and no, it's got this content, and so this is a little bit simpler, and it's a program, and you use the Avery business cards, and once you put the destinations and blah, 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 you slide the business cards in, it prints, you flip it over, it flips the other side. So there's 4 different, top, bottom, back and forth. And so you can flip them around for 4 different destinations. So here in the East Buffalo yard, and Ron and Steve and Stan usually work that just like over on Osborne Yard, only much, much smaller, that when a train comes in, I've had some critics that say this is like playing Monopoly, but yeah, but they're nicely color coded. So it makes it real easy for the crews at, Cleveland, Detroit, that, and boom, they have a train ready to go. Well, the same thing happens with our head-end equipment, is that instead of boxcars, we have RPOs, we have express boxcars, and they all have destinations too. So when a train comes in with all the head-end cars or an express train, they start breaking it apart just like you do in a freight yard, and it either goes to the freight building or the post office there at Buffalo Central Terminal, or it gets ready, like we saw on the previous slide, to get put on another train to, in this case, if we're going westbound, to either Chicago, Cleveland or Detroit, or the other way to New York. All right, so one of the tough things about having passenger or mail and express operations is how are you going to cut the cars? Now, I'm fortunate enough that, again, for those that haven't been to the layout, is that I have some very generous radii, and on the main line, they're probably no less than 42-inch. So we can do close coupling, either by putting a KD short shank in or manipulating the box to where we can get close in coupling. And yes, there's our Pensy train that came in from Washington there. And yes, that is an L&N baggage car that, like I said earlier, that as time went on, these cars kind of went on different railroads. So, all right. So one of the other things about how we're going to cut the cars is that when we have the diaphragms and get them so close and trying to get them as realistic as possible, is that we need to have the slack, just like you would on your conventional freight car, spotting it, pulling the pin and spotting it someplace. We need to have slack on the jaws of the KD couplers. So that's one thing that we need to kind of fine tune on it and get to. And so we have 2 different methods in the passenger station. One is at either end, I have the under the track KD magnet there, and I've marked them with a leftover target from Details West switch stand and painted them, put the number of the track that's on. That way, when the crews are working it, they have a panel board here with has all the toggles for the switches to going into the different platform tracks. And this is a way that also tells them, okay, they're working with track 4 or 5 or so on like that. So what happens though, if we want to make a cut in the middle of this? This is a little uncoupler that years ago, model railroaders Lionel Strange came up with. And so instead of and this was just made for his regular freight cars, but instead of pushing the your pick or whatever in between the cars, this goes ahead and grabs the glad hand and you pull the pin that way. So that's, I think, Mike, been working out pretty well. All right, so here's a couple of op sessions ago that Mike, the station master, and looks like Kent's puzzled with some car cards in his hand there, and Chris Broughton just looking on saying, I can't believe this is happening. Anybody, Bob, Mike, who has worked the passenger station, it's unique. Again, we're just instead of manipulating tank cars and gondolas, we're doing express cars, baggage cars, RPOs. But there's a little bit more. Like I said, instead of spotting most of them at the industry, some are going to the post office. Others are getting ready to go on other trains. If we have to pull a diner, it goes over to commissary. So there's a lot more working around in this one area than you would on like a normal freight ops. And they all say it's fun, but very different. All right. So besides what happens if you don't have on your layout a big metropolitan city? Okay, so here's my small little town depot, Batavia. We don't ever drop an express car there, but you could. And it probably wasn't a small town like this, probably wouldn't have enough contents to drop off a car there, but you can, and I won't tell if you won't tell. So here's my Syracuse, and yes, I still got to get going and finish a lot of buildings there. You see that there's a RPO spotted here. Normally on the Central, would they have dropped off a baggage car or an RPO car? No, they'd probably just have enough to throw off or pick up mail bags and so on like that. But again, for operations, it gives you and the guys something more to do and work at it that way. A side note here that in real life, that in the heyday of passenger travel, that they had enough ridership that on some of these cities like Buffalo, probably Syracuse, they had enough when not a name train, but some of the secondary trains came through that they would drop off a Pullman there and you could stay in your berth until like maybe 7 in the morning, get out and going back the other way that you could enter your berth at 7, 8 o'clock at night. When the train came through at midnight, they would add it and off you go. It's not like today's where if you an Amtrak train, say like going from Chicago to Washington, DC, and you wanted to pick it up at either Toledo or if it came through like Indy, that you would be stuck there at the station at 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that, waiting for the late Amtrak train to come in. So this worked out really, really nice. But again, in the heyday of passenger travel, it usually doesn't work out, but it's always my intent that and then we'll get to it, is that there will be a Pullman that will be dropped off here. Here's Albany, same thing. Here's the REA building. Would they have had Albany's only 100 miles from New York. Would they have dropped off a whole car there? No, it would have just dropped off the bags or picked up and it would have gone on to New York. But again, for the sake of operations, it gives the Albany crew, and Mike has worked Albany quite often, and it gives them something to do over there. So you say, I don't do transition and, I'm kind of holding more to modern times. So this would be probably middle 60s that Rock Island did these, and I think Pensy Central called them Flexivan. This was the prelude, if you will, to containers, although these were just a conventional trailer with some hardware on the bottom that they would sit on the spline car there, and instead of being picked up by a crane, they were rotated off the railroad car onto a chassis of a trailer, and then it would go on to whatever industry in the town that it was meant to go by. All right, well, that I model beyond that. Okay, how about some Jeeps? Here's a trio of Jeeps having, again, a pretty extensive express train there, and you'll see right here there's still a baggage. No, I'm into Amtrak. That was all gone. Okay, fine. Now, sorry, I forget what Amtrak has a buzzword for their express cars here, and granted, there's not
material handling.
There you go. Thank you. But again, same type of deal that you could incorporate that if you wish into your layout or into your op sessions. So that's all I have on this program. I hope that maybe it gave you some ideas of maybe going beyond just having freight operations. I know that probably in the whole country, I'm one of the few guys that actually has passenger train ops, and I think most of the time, at least they haven't said anything, behind my face, but they enjoy it. It brings a different dimension to the op session. So I hope that maybe it gave you a little hint of whether it's a little or a lot, bringing that more into, like I said, your layout, your ops. So thoughts, suggestions, questions?
Russ, on the flexi vans,
Yes.
you said they rotated them off. What does that mean? They rotated them off?
They swung out like
So
this.
they turned 90 degrees.
Yes.
Cool.
Never seen
I want to see that. I want to see that on the land.
Okay, Steve.
Well, I just
There's only one request.
I just couldn't. It's like that's the bad thing about working at scale, even one day a week. It's like, oh heck, look at these. Walther's made them. Go ahead, buy it. No. You don't need that. It's beyond your air. Oh, but you really like it. So I do have so we'll try it out, Fred. And I think again, it's like, oh God, I got those two. Is that I think maybe 6 months ago they either reran those or they came out with the I don't know officially what you call it, but the chassis that they roll out on. So, okay, we'll play with that then. Any other questions or thoughts or
ways to make Russ spend more money?
Yeah, you guys are very good at that. And if Lasher's still on, he's very good at that. So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you, Rob. And with that, we'll say goodbye.